You might have seen cops getting owned by lawyers or other cops. But have you ever seen cops who got owned by normal people like you? That's what we are going to take a look at in today's video, when cops get owned by civilians. So, let's get straight into it.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Your license, your registration, and proof of insurance. Here's my badge.
On our number 7 list, we have a typical cop who stopped at a car and then went up to the woman in the car, trying to abuse his power to the woman sitting in the car. Now, this woman had nothing to do with the stop, and had done nothing wrong to be stopped in the first place. The cop then strikes up his reason for the stop, for her being a potential witness to something. Even the woman doesn't know herself, nor does the cop. After a brief argument, the cop tells her he wants to check her ID. As the argument continues, the cop goes up to say she was sitting in the car. Well, a pointless argument right there. After that, the cop goes on with his statement of her being a potential witness, and her refusal to show her ID to the cop, which the cop finds suspicious. Then, after some time of argument, the woman reminds the cop of her rights, and the cop in return replies that he has been in the force for 20 plus years, and doesn't watch shows during his duty. Then the woman teaches the cop her rights, and the cop has nothing to say in the end, and has to walk away with a lesson to never mess with a civilian who knows their rights.
Let's look at it, sir. It's a Miller Lite.
Number 6. The good cops can be a god in the form of humans, but the bad ones can be like a cockroach, who will look for any tiny issues to catch onto, so they can eat you up. This next cop pulls over a guy with a beard, whom he suspects of the deaths in a local community. The cop's reason for his suspicion was that he was not from the community, so that he could be a thief in this area. The man in the car places his camera on the dashboard and records the incident. The cop further states that he could be an ex-murderer. After some brief arguments, the man asks the cop if he is free to go, to which the cop says yes, but also tells him that he is not allowed to stay in this area and tells him to leave the area. Now, police officers or any law enforcement personnel can't tell a person to leave a public place unless there's a life-threatening issue at the scene, such as a crime scene or some serious hazard to the public, in which there's none at the scene. The man in the car further tells the cop that he was just in his car playing games on his phone, and he was the one who came to him. The cop, in response, tells him that the man is in an area where he does not live. This man tells him that if the cop sees him doing any crimes, after which the cop leaves and comes back, telling him he is under traffic violation, and tells him that he needs his ID just in case of future crimes happening in the area. The police officer then argues with the man about when someone should present themselves with an ID. The suspect here refers to the Tennessee Code, which states that when a police officer asks for ID for writing a citation, failure to do so can be used to arrest the suspect. In all that argument, the officer decides to stop sucking on him and leaves before he gets owned by this man.
What kind of beverage is that?
Looks like a Pepsi.
Stay your distance, please.
Number 5. In this next video, 2 big-looking armed officers approach a man enjoying his Pepsi on the side of the road when they greet him. These officers stated that they suspected him of drinking alcohol in public, which was by law not allowed. The man is seen holding a can of Pepsi, but these 2 cops don't budge. But these cops don't know that they're about to get owned by an educated civilian. One of the cops asks the man to show which type of can it was. The man then argues if holding a Pepsi can be a reason for suspicion of drinking in public, in which the officers don't listen to any of his arguments. The man then asks the officers for their cards, which one of them gives in a ninja-style manner, while the other officer just hands it to him like a business card. After the citizen gives these officers a taste of the law, they find that it's better to leave the scene before getting some more laws and rights preached to them.
He doesn't want you guys back here. To verify that, I need your names so that if you do show up again, you can leave go to jail.
Number 4. This time, a manager calls the cops on a group of guys for causing a disturbance in the restaurant. But when the cops arrive on the scene, they decide to confront the wrong group of boys. In response, they picked up their phones and started to record the officer. The officer's reason for his suspicion was the call from the manager of the restaurant in which he complained of a disturbance by a group of people. This group then asked the officers for their badge number and their names, which they refused to comply with. The cops go as far as handcuffing one of the dudes and then refusing to say their name and badge number on the camera. If they had just called in the manager to confirm the group, all this could have been avoided. Now they're about to get educated about the law in the best possible way. The group requested the officers to call the manager once to confirm if the group was them or someone else, which the officers denied. After that, the guy holding the camera tells the cop that if anyone trespasses, they should be asked to leave, and if they refuse to do so, officers have the right to arrest them. In this case, none of them refuse to leave, as the officers never asked them to leave the area in the first place. After that, the manager of the restaurant comes out and tells the officers that they are not the group that the officers are looking for. After this, these officers are forced to let them go and leave with shame.
How you doing?
All right.
Take a picture of the railroad.
That gate right yonder.
Number 3. Next on the list, the federal cops tried to arrest an auditor, but as their luck got out of hand, a sheriff was nearby. Now, the incident itself is very weird. The guy filming was facing toward the direction of the gate. Now, the officers approached him, suspecting him of taking photographs of the gate. When asked, the officers don't seem to have a specific answer. The federal officer then calls for some backup. The county sheriff pulls up and tells him to go because he had done nothing wrong in the first place. After he walks away, he sees that the federal cop is still following him. And then the county sheriff's car pulls up, and the federal police are seen fleeing the scene. The sheriff introduced himself to the men and asked what was going on. The cameraman explains the situation to him, and the sheriff understands and tells him to continue his exploration as he is doing nothing illegal.
Do me a favor, can you just come around the front here? Thank you, that'd be great.
Number 2. This next cop decides to pull over the wrong guy on the highway. They pulled him over because they suspected him of doing something illegal. Now first, they tell him to step out of the car in the cold, and then search him up and ask him questions about illegal items in the car or if he's doing drugs. The cops then ask him for his address, which he refuses to give them, as there is nothing to do with this case. Then the cops start to argue with him about his address and bring up the topic of him carrying illegal items in his car. The officers then tell him that they may need to call the K9 unit to check the car if they suspect anything out of the ordinary. The man strictly refused to let them check his car, as the cops were probably harassing him for no apparent cause. Even after the man's refusal of the man, the officer still decides to check his car, and when he finds nothing illegal, he lets the man know he is free to go. But the man had had enough of his harassment, asked him for his card, and let the officer know that his attorney would be harassing him soon.
We don't want them to leave. They're standing here. They're filming the customers for...
Number 1. In this final clip, a liquor store owner calls the cops on some man who was filming his customers. When the officer arrives on the scene, she first questions the store owner and then asks the gentleman if he has any ID. She explained how he was trespassing, but the man had none of it. He lets the officer know that he was filming on public property and was not even inside the store, which was private property. But even after explaining the situation, the officer was adamant about getting his ID, claiming he was trespassing. And as we talked about the laws of trespassing, the officer needs to ask the individual to leave the property first, and if they refuse, then the police have the right to arrest them. But as before, the officer does not ask him to leave, but instead asks his ID. Then the civilians educate the officers, and when the realization finally sets in their faces, they decide to leave the scene before things escalate further.